Only you can decide what you need to do for yourself. But ultimately, don't stay in a marriage that is making you ill. You only have one life. You only have one choice. It's not a rehearsal. And that was the thing, I think, that finally tipped the balance for me.
Hello and welcome to Chaps Out with me, Grant Philpott, the podcast where I talk to men about coming out later in life and get to have the conversations I wish I'd heard when I was looking for advice. Conversations we still don't hear often enough in the UK. This podcast is for anyone navigating their own personal coming out journey wherever you may be. And remember, you are not alone. My guest today grew up in a traditional but not religious Jewish family in South Manchester. He went to medical school in London and graduated in 1979. He became a GP, a role he held throughout his entire career until his retirement. He was previously married and has 2 sons and 3 teenage granddaughters. So I'm very pleased to welcome my guest today, Tony Kaye.
Hi there, Grant. Hi. How are you doing?
Really good. I've heard you on other podcasts talking about coming out. And so let's start by talking about the age you were when you decided to come out.
I was 63 when I actually came out. So that's for most people, that's very, very late indeed. Took me a long journey to get there, and having the confidence to do it. And as you can fully appreciate, it was a very, very difficult moment in my life. But I suppose I reflect back to the time before that when I was married, had a very happy marriage. And as you mentioned, I grew up in a traditional but not religious Jewish family. And of course, that brings with it certain, I don't want to say restrictions, but certain expectations, perhaps, of how life goes. And also because of my age, I'm talking now about my late teens and university period, where it was in the 1970s. And it was a very different world in terms of coming out and the LGBT world, and obviously pre the AIDS epidemic and all of that, but pre-internet as well. So it was very difficult to actually meet and communicate with people. And I had no awareness of being gay. I always knew that there was some attraction to men, but I was equally attracted to my wife and truly believed that I was bisexual, and sustained a very happy marriage with the children and my career. I look back on my career with pride and with happiness that, I was very fortunate, working in a nice area with nice people. And so I suppose all of that part of my life, I just got on with it. I did, as I've come to say later in life, I suppose I did what was expected of me in so many aspects of my life. In my early 50s, that's when things started to change. And that was, I think, the point at which I realized that I was gay and that I wasn't bi. And that in some ways came as a big shock to me, because I didn't know where that was going to lead me. And it took me some time to actually come to terms and accept it. I've subsequently met other people who've sort of realized that they were gay later in life. And part of my rationale for doing this now and talking to you and sharing this story is because there could well be lots and lots of other guys out there who, for one reason or another, are struggling with their sexuality within a marriage. And I'm very aware that there are lots of people out there like that. And so if, somebody listening to this feels that it helps them along their journey, then that's the rationale for me doing it. So I having realized I was gay, I tried to suppress that. It was a bit like I compare it to a Jack in the Box, really, where it pops up and then you're trying to stuff the lid down and pretend it doesn't really happen, and it's not really, because I could see that if I allowed this to overtake me, that it was going to change my life beyond anything I could know. And as I say, I had a wonderful relationship with my wife. And at that point in my career, it was in sort of the second half of my professional life. At that point, my children were older. But I reached a point after years of turmoil and inner torment. Those are the words that I've used repeatedly, that I just felt that I had no choice but at least to explore what was going on in my head. It was making me mentally ill. I was under a lot of pressure at work. So I was having some mental health issues, some anxiety and depression, which I'd had on and off over the years. But I also knew that it wasn't just work-related stress. I knew that there was an element of sexuality in that mix, and it was destroying me really. So when I got to 63, I met up. The first person I went to was a gay rabbi friend of mine. Well, no, I say friend, he's become a friend. He wasn't a friend at the time, but I knew him and he vaguely knew me through a mutual connection. And I approached him. He wasn't my rabbi of my synagogue, but I approached him and said, I think you will know who I am when we meet, but would you be willing to chat? There's something I'd like to talk to you about. And I thought the reason I went to him was because, as with any faith situation, there are expectations within that culture. And I know it's within the Catholic culture and within the Muslim culture that, being gay is frowned upon. It's the Leviticus abomination, isn't it, really? And but I thought he would appreciate not only being gay, although he hadn't been married, he was always gay, but that he would also appreciate the cultural implications of coming out into a Jewish community in a Jewish world. I had been quite high profile in my synagogue, in an administrative role. I'd been chairman of the synagogue. That was obviously before I came out. And so there was this whole aspect that not just me, but my wife as well, were well known within our Jewish community and within our synagogue. So he was amazing. And he introduced me to a congregant of his who had gone through the same thing of coming out later in life and who was now well settled into a stable gay relationship. And after having met the rabbi and talked things over with him, and then met this other couple, I felt I knew exactly what I had to do. And that was the time when I then sat down with my wife and said that, I've got something that I need to share with you. I said to her, you have said recently that I don't tell you I love you as much as perhaps I used to do. And I said, the truth is that I love you just as much, if not more than I ever have. But there is a problem. And I told her that I was gay, and it was very tearful and for both of us. And I just kept saying, I'm sorry, because I didn't know what else to say. And she said to me, stop saying sorry because you can't help who you are. And I think that set the tone for how we went forward from that, really, in the respect that I have been respectful to her throughout, because I knew how much this was going to hurt her, and how it was going to affect our relationship. I didn't know exactly where we were going to go in the future, but I knew that where we were at that moment. And after that, we decided that we wanted to tell our two sons. Took us a couple of weeks to organize to get the four of us together, because we didn't want to tell them separately. We wanted the four of us to be together because that's how we work as a family. So we met up at the house and told my boys, and they were amazing. And
Great.
look, it's difficult. Yes, neither of my boys are in the slightest homophobic. It's not the way they were brought up to be. And also my younger son works in an environment where he mixes with lots of gay people. So he's been not just supportive, but also encouraging as well. So we told the boys, and then the next step was for me to tell my brother. And my brother, I felt, was a very macho guy, who I didn't know how he would react at all. Took him out for lunch, told him, and I was blown away by his response. And he had no idea. None of them had any idea. But then his wife, I mean, she's also my sister-in-law. She's also they as a couple have been incredible, way, way, way better than I ever anticipated, because I just didn't know how they were going to react.
Mm.
So having told the family, it was a case of, well, what do we do now? And
Yeah.
I went through some counselling with the LGBT Foundation in Manchester, and the purpose of that counselling was to work through what were my options.
Yeah.
As far as I could see, there were 4 options, one of which was to just sort of not pretend it hadn't happened, but put the lid on it, accept it, and just try and carry on as we were. Second option was to move out and live my own
Yeah.
life. The third option was no, sorry, I've mixed that up actually. The fourth option was to get divorced.
Right.
Third option was to move out. But the second option was to, and in fact, my wife suggested this. What about if you just have time out when you feel that you need to, I suppose, time out for bad behavior almost? And I said, that's not what I want. I don't want to be doing that. It would make this whole thing feel seedy. It was just about sex. And so that for me was never an option. And the option ultimately was that I needed to move out and live my life as a gay man. So we decided we would do that on a temporary basis initially and see how it worked out. That wasn't how it panned out, actually, in the end. Once I moved out, I moved out. But the question of divorce didn't arise till a lot further down the line. I'll come back to that. So 6 months after coming out, a few months after coming out, where we'd both gone to some counselling together as well as my personal counselling. We went to relationship counselling, and after about 3 or 4 sessions, we agreed that there was no point continuing because our relationship was fine. We loved each other, we cared about each other, and this wasn't going to help us. It was down to me to decide what my needs were. So then we started to tell a few close friends, and that was very difficult, very time consuming, because we were like 3 months down the line, and we'd already accepted it and dealt with it in lots of ways. But then having to start from scratch with friends who had no idea what we'd been going through, and because we were such a good marriage, people probably perceived us as the perfect couple, and to suddenly hear that by this point, not only am I gay, but also that we've agreed to separate. They were very shocked by that. After telling, say, half a dozen couples, and we always did it together, the two of us, we decided we needed to share this more widely in a less emotional way. And my wife suggested that I prepare an email, which I did, and she never changed a word of it. She said, that's fine. And I sent this email out to most of my address book, and she suddenly started getting messages from people. And she said to me, why have you sent it to so many people? And I said, because once we do this, up until now, we've been able to control it.
Yeah.
But once this goes out, we will be it'll be not out in our control, and people will start talking about it, which of course is exactly what happened. Have you heard? Have you heard? So I said, that's the reason. I wanted people to hear it the way we want to tell it.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we have no control.
Yeah.
So that was it then. We were sort of out there and we were open. And strangely enough, that was not long before the Jewish New Year in 2019.
Right.
And traditionally, one would go to synagogue at Jewish New Year. It's called Rosh Hashanah. I can't remember. Somebody said to me, will you be going to synagogue? And it was an interesting question, which sort of pulled me up because I thought, yeah, why wouldn't I? I'm not going to hide away just because everybody there knows that I've come out as gay.
Yeah.
And my wife and I decided the way we were going to approach it was that we walked into synagogue together.
Strong.
We left together.
Yeah.
And that's the way we've dealt with it throughout, really. We also had a very close group of friends that used to go out regularly for a curry on the last Sunday of every month. The next time this curry night came up, we decided to go together.
Right.
And it's, your closest group of friends. And I
Yeah.
said to them, because of course they all knew, and I said, look, I just want to say this is the elephant in the room. You don't have to choose between us because we're fine with each other. And so I was astonished by the way everybody responded. I was astonished by our friends, our acquaintances, distant family, and also the synagogue community. I didn't know how that would go down because being gay in that world, it just shows me how much the world has moved on, and how accepting our particular community is. So by this point, it's out,
Yeah.
I'm gay. At this point, I was living alone. Strangely, the following January, so that's 3 months after I'd moved out, my wife and I were due to go on a cruise around South America that we'd booked a long time before, 18 months before. And there was a whole discussion around what are we going to do? Our son works on cruise ships as an entertainer, and he'd arranged a long time before that to be on the same ship that we were on
Right.
when we were there. And it was a big discussion. Are we going to still do the cruise? Does she want to go with a friend instead of me? And she said, no, I want to go with you. And it was a strange situation considering that we'd lived apart for 3 months by then. But we just decided that we're not going to talk about our situation on this holiday. We're still friends. We're going to just enjoy the holiday because we knew this would be our last holiday together. And having our son there was a major help because in moments of, emotional turbulence, we were able to sort of go off with him and just talk things over and what have you, and
Wow. Yeah.
work really well. Yeah. So then I've moved out. The problem is when I moved out, I didn't know anything about the gay world. I'd lived in a heterosexual world where people had been married around 40 years, just as we had, and didn't have any gay friends, didn't know how the gay world worked. And I did some Googling and found out that there were lots of LGBT activities in Manchester, as you probably might have guessed, So there's lots going on here, all sorts of different groups, meetup groups, social groups, etc. There's a bowling group, temporary bowling. There's a swimming group. There's a badminton group. There's a outdoor lads group.
Yeah.
And
They've all got good names, haven't they?
the Gay City Bowlers. The badminton group's called the Northern Cocks. One of the outdoor groups is called the Front Runners. So yeah, there's all sorts of.
Yeah.
And I started to go along to some of these with the intention of making some friends in the gay world, and introducing me to the gay village in Manchester, which is widely known and well respected in Manchester. It's very integrated. Even the street signs refer to the gay village. The Manchester Pride, of course, is a massive, massive event. So I started to engage a little bit, and I have to admit, I was a bit shocked at what I saw. The way people present themselves, the way people dressed, all the fetishy and kink groups and so on, something I'd never experienced and knew nothing about.
Yeah.
And I just thought, is this the world that I've entered now? And do I have to become like this? And I just saw myself as, I hate to use this word, but as a normal gay man who just happens to be gay.
Yeah.
And I realized that that's fine and everything is acceptable. Just be who you are and be who you want to be. And if people want to have those particular fetishes, that's fine. It's not something for me. So I started to make friends, and unfortunately, some lovely friends who I'm still friendly with. But unfortunately, 6 months after I moved out, COVID happened. And that was an immensely difficult period for me, living on my own, feeling very isolated, not able to meet anybody. Yes, on Zoom was fine, and go for walks and so on. And that was about it, really. And I found that really difficult. But I managed to maintain all the friendships that I'd started to develop during that first 6 months period. And I'm still friendly with all those people today.
Oh, great. Yeah. Lovely.
Now, what the next thing that happened was that I towards the end of COVID, when you could go into the gay village or go to a bar, but you could sit outside, but you couldn't go inside. And I was in the village one night and I bumped into a crowd of gay men who were out having drinks and got chatting with them. And it turned out they belonged to the Manchester Lesbian and Gay Chorus.
Right.
I didn't even know the choir existed. And it's a mixed choir, as if by the very name, although the
Yeah.
name has now changed. It's now called Manchester Proud Chorus. And they said, have you thought about joining the choir? Why don't you join the choir? And I couldn't join them because it was still part of COVID. But after COVID, I joined the choir. Again, hoping to meet new people, naively thinking I might meet the man of my dreams. But I've made some wonderful friends through that. And, you know, 2 or 3 particularly close friends, and people that I've been on holiday with, you know, and it's really grown from there. So I suppose in many ways, that's where I'm at 6, 7 years down the line. If I look back, would I have done anything differently? I don't think I had a choice. I think the most important thing for me was that I needed to be respectful to my ex-wife. We went through a very amicable divorce, just because we had to. She needed to move on with her life, and you know, she needed the freedom to do that. Really, with getting out of the confines of being married. She made an interesting point to me, actually, which hadn't occurred, where at the point, a couple of years in, where she suddenly started to feel she needed to move on, again, post-COVID and what have you. She said to me, I think there are probably some men who wouldn't want to go out with me if I'm separated but not divorced. So that was the thing that sort of led on to us going down the divorce route.
I didn't have anyone to, you know, break up with when I came out, so I was very lucky in that respect. And obviously, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are in your position where you are like, how do I get out? What am I going to do? And I think your advice, certainly your story about getting on with your ex-wife is brilliant. That's what you want, isn't it? And you couldn't have done anything differently. That's absolutely, you know, testament to you to manage to work that through and do it in a dignified and respectful way to everyone you care for.
I think she would still say we're best friends. You know, we recently had a situation where my mother-in-law, ex-mother-in-law, she's the only remaining parent, if you like. She's been ill, terminally ill. And my wife has been dating a guy now for 2.5 years. So over the past few months, my wife has really wanted me to be involved, and I wanted to be involved because I've known my mother-in-law for 52 years, you know, and she's my mother-in-law, and also she was a very unconventional lady, which was really fascinating because she accepted my situation. She accepted the fact that that my wife and I were separated. And in fact, after we got divorced and because of our friendship, she said, you're the least divorced couple I've ever met. But in recent months, while my mother-in-law's health has been deteriorating, I've been involved a lot in phone calls with my wife, visiting my ex-mother-in-law, going to hospital appointments with them. And also, as well as just my personal relationship, they wanted my medical input as well to it all.
Oh,
And
yes, of
then
course.
towards the end, there's been a lot of situations where she passed away about a month ago. And so I've spent a lot of time with my wife and her boyfriend.
Right.
No, and I'm fine with him. Absolutely fine. You know, he's a lovely guy. They seem to be happy together. And I have this utopian, probably naive vision that when I've got a partner, that the 4 of us can be friends. And
Why not?
I can see the way things are at the moment. I can see no reason why it shouldn't be like that. We're comfortable. So we'll see what happens. And I've managed to sustain a very good relationship with all my old friends from my straight life. And of course, with all these new friends. I'm still living alone. It'll be coming up to 7 years. And there is still a lot of sadness in there, if I'm honest, about the fact that despite everything I've said and all these wonderful friends, I haven't found a relationship. It's not as if I've had one that's not happened, you know, that ended. And one of the things that shocked me about the gay world also was short-term relationships. You know, people would say, well, I was with this guy for 2 years and this guy for 5 years or this guy for 7 years. I have met one or two guys who've been in long-term relationships of maybe 25 years or more, but it's rare. And it wasn't rare in the world I came from. So, so yeah, that's the thing that's evaded me at this point.
That's the thing, isn't it? Go around the corner one day, sliding doors moment or something. We live in
Well,
hope, don't we?
I wish I had £1 for every person that said to me, it'll happen when you least expect it.
I almost.
I'm sure that's true. Yes, and it's more or less what you've just said, but I'm sure it's true that that will happen. Well, if it were to happen, it will be, you know, when I least expect it. Somebody will walk into my life where the feelings are mutual, because I have met people who I would love to have a relationship with, but it's not been reciprocated, or vice versa. You know, and you can't make yourself feel something if it's not there.
No. You have to put yourself out there, I guess. And, you know, that I haven't been necessarily. I've just, in terms of me going out to bars or whatever. So the more I do that, you know, I'll hope to go to some gay parades and stuff like that, pride parades, you know. That'd be amazing to obviously just hang out with a load of people having a party. I haven't done anything on a scale like that at all.
I find it quite overwhelming. I mean, Manchester Pride, for example, is totally overwhelming for me, because it's so widely attended from people all over. I think people come from across abroad, even to Manchester Pride.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I have been in the parade because the choir has a float on the parade, so I've participated in that way. And that was a load of fun, you know, being in the parade. It's a really big parade.
Yeah.
And then there are local prides in Manchester as well. All the little suburbs now are having their own pride. And some of those are really quite nice because they're sort of like family fun days where, you know, families come as well as the gay community as well and show support and what have you. But the one thing I won't say is that I'm proud to be gay. I'm happy to be out. I'm happy to be able to be true to being a gay man, but I'm not proud of it. And I wish I wasn't gay. And interestingly, I had conversations with some guys about that who say, oh, I'm really happy to be gay. I'm really pleased that I'm gay. I can't say that. And the reason I can't say that is that it's taken away from me the person I love most in the world. You know? This is where I get emotional every time I say that. But you know, we'll just have to see what happens. And as I've got older and had a special birthday this year, it's like another milestone where you think, did I leave it too late? You know, is it ever likely to happen at this stage of my life? Who knows? I'm open to whatever comes along, and I just hope that something does come along, because I don't want to think about living the rest of my life on my own. I hope that somebody special will come into my life. I mean, some people have said to me, would I particularly like to have a Jewish partner? And the answer is, if I wanted to specify that I would only have a Jewish partner, then I would have to leave Manchester, because the Jewish population, although it's the second largest Jewish population in the UK, it's still, if you narrow it down to how many, bring it all down to the age and the blah, 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 the pool is small. So I would have to go to London probably. But I can't make that choice. And it's not something that specifically is important to me now at this stage of my life. It's about the person.
You say you're not proud. So, you know, is that something that you kind of pushed away consciously when you were younger? The feelings, the curiosity or whatever?
Well, as I said, you know, I always knew there was some attraction to men, but I think I was a late developer, and I'm now talking in the, you know, as I said, the 1970s, where it was a very different world in the way being gay was viewed nationally and internationally. You know, it was so different. And within the Jewish world as well, there was, you know, it was, obviously there were gay Jewish people, but I think they were sort of hidden and closeted. It was never talked about. So I think the answer is yes, I did suppress those feelings. I did try and push it away. And then, as I say, you know, I met and fell in love with my wife and followed that path, you know, and as do so many people.
Mm.
Um, how would it be? If it was now, how would I be? I'm sure maybe I would have accepted being gay at a much earlier point in my life. Would I have come out earlier? Probably,
Mm.
because it was more acceptable. My parents weren't alive when I came out. Would I have done that if my parents had been still alive? Probably not. I don't know.
Mm.
It's hypothetical.
Yeah.
Um, but so it was such a different world that the way one had to approach it was in a different way. And I think the younger generation now can't possibly appreciate. Then, of course, as I said, the AIDS crisis in the 1980s came along. And of course, everything was suppressed again, wasn't it? You know, the gay community were treated so badly at that point.
Yeah. The press and everything was a feeling of fear and shame, and all those things were kind of just rolled in and seeped down. And you know, I always talk about the lack of education as well, that it wasn't talked about at all in school. So we were, you know, kind of, I guess, just not aware of. I certainly wasn't aware of bisexuality.
I think bisexuality, and as I say, I thought I was bisexual
Mm.
for a very, very long time. I think there is a lot of misunderstanding about bisexuality, and I think lots of gay men don't believe that bisexuality exists. That
Mm.
you know, tend to think that you just haven't become gay yet or haven't accepted being gay yet.
Mm.
Yeah, but I do believe, and I've always believed, that it's a spectrum, isn't it?
Yeah.
One of my closest friends asked me after I came out to him back in the day, said to me, "Is this all about sex?" And what I think he was implying at the age of 63 was, is that so important that's enough for you to do this, you know? And I said, it's not all about sex.
Mm.
And it isn't. I always talk about the word intimacy. And for me, sex is a small part of intimacy. And the whole thing about intimacy with a man now feels very different for me. And I don't say any of that to negate any of the love and intimacy I had with my wife, but it just feels different.
Mm.
And, you know, it's maybe hard to explain, especially to somebody who's straight.
Yeah.
But it's this concept of intimacy, and that's looking forward for me. That's what I crave. It's that the whole relationship with somebody with intimacy where it just feels so different.
Mm.
Interestingly, as you know, I've done a podcast before,
Mm.
an audio podcast about this story of coming out later in life. It's an American-based podcast. And as a result of that, I've made friends with a guy in America who went through exactly the same as me. Our
Mm.
stories were absolutely identical. Married, long time, 2 children, 3 grandchildren. The only difference was the different faiths, but
Right.
we've become really good friends. He's been over to visit me here. I've been over to visit him there. Um, I've met all his family, met his
Wow.
wife, children and grandchildren.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's fascinating seeing somebody 5,000 miles away who's going through exactly the same as you. And interestingly, he has now found a relationship.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and again, it was one of those least expect it moments. So all I can do is least expect it every day.
Yes. Try not to think about it too much. Yeah.
But that's the trouble. And I think people have said to me, stop looking and stop thinking about it. And maybe it'll happen, you know, and maybe it will. But it's very difficult to stop thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, talking about putting yourself out there, you told me about something that you did that was on television this year called Worlds Apart, where it was kind of a reality show, I guess.
I was approached by a casting producer and it came completely out of the blue online. It was the sort of approach that I could easily have just completely dismissed as a scam or something. And after being approached by the same guy through two different online sources, I thought, hang on, let's take this a bit more seriously. And they said they were looking for people over 60 to take part in a Channel 4 TV travel program. They said it was billed at the time as Trip of a Lifetime. And the more he talked to me about it, the more I thought, this sounds really interesting and intriguing. He said, I'm not allowed to tell you where you're going to go. And I'm not allowed to tell you much about the program. All will, become evident over time. But and I had to go through various hoops of being interviewed and speak to a psychologist and see if I was suitable to take part. And so ultimately, there were 6 people of my age group. The youngest was 68, and the oldest was a lady of 80. And they didn't tell us where we were going, but they told us we were traveling somewhere that was at least 12 hours flight, somewhere warm. They gave us packing advice. Yeah. They told us that it was city-based. It wasn't a beach holiday type. Right. And we were also told that the tasks were not going to be physical, but they were mental tasks. I didn't know where I was going till I got to Heathrow. Right. What I also didn't know was that there was another group of 6 younger people, age 18 to 24, who were staying in a different hotel. And so on the morning of the flight, we were told we were going to Japan. So we flew off to Tokyo. As I say, the younger group were on a different flight. Right. Stayed in a different hotel. And that was the point where they said, right, the way this is going to work, that you're going to be paired up with one of the younger group and you're going to work as a team. So there will be 6 teams of 2 and you will be given tasks. But we're not looking for arguments. We don't want it to be battling. We're not looking for that sort of program. We want this to be a heartwarming program. And what we're looking for is to see how people 2 generations apart can actually work together and tackle these challenges. And also the title of the program, as you mentioned, Worlds Apart, was quite clever because not only was it worlds apart for the people, the intergenerational relationship, but also it was worlds apart between Japanese culture and British culture. And so they said, we want you to meet on camera. And that's what happened. I met my partner. My partner was an 18-year-old, lovely 18-year-old girl who had been brought up in foster care in Blackpool. It became evident along this journey at some point that what they wanted us for was our backstory. They wanted me for my story as a man who, come out later in life. And so I agreed to do it with a little bit of trepidation, again, thinking about my wife and how she would feel about me going on national television, telling people about coming out later in life. And I was very concerned that they wouldn't edit it in such a way that it was insensitive to her. Well, they said to me, we can't because you've not said anything that's insensitive to her. And I wouldn't, but you never know how they're going to edit these programs. Yeah. I must admit, when it did go out, I was not unhappy, and neither was my wife. She said to me she thought it came across really well. Unfortunately, I didn't do as well in the competition as I might have liked. I'd like to have been in it for longer, but it is what it is. And in these reality shows, somebody gets dumped. But it was an experience, and I look back on it and say, look, I got a trip to Japan. I met some lovely people. I was given the opportunity. Why turn it down? I'm retired. I'm at that stage of life where I can take an opportunity if it comes my way. And I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, it's great because you get to come out on national television as well. That's a really special thing for you as well, which I thought that was so, brave of you to do that on on camera.
Well, just use the word brave, and even coming out to friends, family, and the community well before any of this, a lot of people used the word brave. And I never thought of it that way, really. But coming out on national TV, yes, I get.
That's a big one.
To be honest, 6 years down the line, I'm comfortable with it. I'm not
Yeah.
ashamed of it. I'm not embarrassed by it. I'm very open about it. Um, and as I've said before, if any of that helps somebody else in this situation, I hope that they will have the courage to do it if it
Mm.
feels right. And I'd love to meet them.
Yeah.
One thing I haven't talked about actually is my granddaughters.
Oh, yes.
All of this.
Coming out to them.
Well, I haven't come out to them, but they know. My son told them a while back, and they've never spoken to me about it. And we're absolutely fine. We have a lovely, wonderful relationship. We're a very close family with both my sons and their wives and so on. But my granddaughters have never asked me, mentioned it. And if I say to my son, I'm surprised that they've never asked
Mm.
me anything. He says, well, what do you want them to say? What do you
Mm.
want them to ask you?
Mm.
In the fullness of time, if you have a boyfriend, then obviously, So then the next big thing that came along was this program on TV.
Ah.
And how were they going to deal with that? Because they were now going to see their grandpa on television telling the world about being gay. Because they'd never had a conversation with me, so I've never discussed it with them. And I never actually, what I really wanted to happen was that I would watch the program with them.
Right.
It didn't happen for various reasons. And subsequently, they've never mentioned it either. I mean, they said they've seen the program, but, so it is what it is. But my relationship with them is lovely and loving and fine. But I personally am surprised that they've never asked me anything at all about it. But they clearly know.
I'd like to ask you about advice you would give to anyone who's thinking about coming out, or just, a little bit confused or whatever it is, because, you're not entirely sure yourself what you're going through and all that. And then suddenly you get clarity.
I think all I can do is to share my story, because everybody's journey is different. But I feel for guys who are in a marriage where either they think they're bisexual or they actually know that they're gay and they're struggling. But if somebody is struggling in the way that I was, then I would have to say, this is what happened for me. Take it as I give it to you, and only you can decide what you need to do for yourself. But ultimately, don't stay in a marriage that is making you ill. You only have one life. You only have one choice. It's not a rehearsal. And that was the thing, I think, that finally tipped the balance for me. As I was in my 60s thinking, am I ever going to feel true to myself?
Mm.
And so, but there are I've come across bisexual and bi-curious men who are sort of wanting to sort of reach out to other guys, but are afraid of stepping out there. And I totally understand it. I was terrified. Every gay person has to go through something that straight people don't have to go through. And even to this day, there's the realization that you're gay, because 95% of the population are not. The fact that you come to terms with it, and you have to at some point acknowledge it and share it with other people. Straight people don't have to do that.
Mm.
And I think somewhere along the way that affects all of us emotionally and mentally, and there is a high level of mental illness within the gay community. And I've spoken to one or two people who've been out forever who say that they believe that all gay men are damaged. And maybe women as well. I can't speak for the lesbian world, but that there is a certain element of emotional damage because of that hurdle and that journey and that jump that you have to make.
The great thing with this is getting to do this is I just get to talk to similar like-minded guys who've been through the same thing, and that's really, really good affirmation.
Because people truly can understand and
Mm.
appreciate all the emotional challenges that you
Mm.
have been facing up to this.
We could go on and on and on. I know we have done already, but so just before we wrap up, I just love you to give us a little trailer of what you're going to be talking about in the Chaps Out Culture podcast.
Yeah, one of the most beautiful things that I've seen is Call Me by Your Name, which was a beautiful movie set in Italy. Um, the filming, the direction was incredible, and some of the takes in that were done, I believe, in one take, where they just let the people let it just flow. It's not pornographic. It's a beautiful relationship between a younger man and a slightly older man, and I highly recommend it. I've read the book after I've seen the movie. Definitely happy to talk about that one.
Lovely. Well, that's really good. I hadn't heard of that, so looking forward to you filling us in on that. And obviously, one of these things I'm going to have to check out. I love in these recommendations. They always give me a bit of sort of homework after the chat, and I get to sort of catch up. And sounds great. So, thank you very much, Tony, for sharing your story with us. It's been absolutely brilliant, and I really hope that your words can help someone else. Thank you.
That's the main purpose of doing this, really.
Great.
I hope maybe we'll meet one day.
Well, hope so. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, see where this goes. All right. Cheers.
See you.
Thanks again for listening to Chaps Out, and to Tony for sharing his honest and heartfelt words. His story showed compassion and respect for his wife, his children, grandchildren, his faith community, and himself. When Tony said, "Don't stay in a marriage that is making you ill. You only have one life. It's not a rehearsal," I know how much that will resonate with so many men who are struggling silently. Men who love their families, have built good lives, but are being worn down by pretending. When Tony said every gay person has to go through something that straight people don't, he was acknowledging the fear, the emotion, and the mental toll that many of us have felt. Tony's story is a reminder that coming out later in life isn't about rejecting the past, it's about choosing to live the rest of your life honestly. It's about saying no more hiding, even when that choice is painful. If anything Tony said resonated with you, please remember you are not weak and you are not alone. And if you're listening right now, wondering whether it's too late to come out, Tony's story is proof that it never is. And please subscribe to Chaps Out wherever you listen, so you never miss an episode, along with episodes of our companion podcast, Chaps Out Culture. And please follow us on YouTube, TikTok and Instagram. And if you grew up in the UK and came out later in life and have an inspiring story you'd like to share, get in touch at chapsoutpod@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. Take care.